I was holding a scorched spatula in one hand and a stack of printed bank statements in the other when I realized my life was about to get loud. Most people wait for the perfect moment to destroy an enemy, plotting in the shadows like a coward. I prefer the direct approach. I prefer an audience. And looking around my backyard, seeing 40 of our closest friends and neighbors holding paper plates of potato salad and ribs, I knew the stage was set. Dave was sitting at the picnic table, the center of attention as usual. He had that practice slump in his shoulders, the look of a beaten dog that he had perfected over the last 3 months. He was speaking in a hushed, trembling tone to Martha, the neighborhood gossip, while glancing nervously at me. I saw Martha pat his hand. I saw the look of disgust she shot my way. That was the signal. It was time to pull the trigger. 3 months ago, Dave showed up on my porch with 2 duffel bags and a face full of misery. His marriage to Linda had imploded. He didn't give me the details, just said she had turned into a monster and kicked him out. We had been best friends for 30 years, since high school football. You don't ask questions when a brother is down. You open the door. I told him the guest room was his for as long as he needed. No rent, no bills, just get back on your feet. I was living alone since my wife passed 4 years ago, and the house felt too big anyway. I thought having my best friend around would be good for both of us. A little noise in the hallway. Someone to watch the game with. I was wrong. The first week was fine. We drank beer, ordered pizza, and he cried about how much he missed his kids. I listened. I cooked steaks. I told him he was a good man and that Linda was crazy to let him go. I drove him to his lawyer's appointments because his car had broken down. I even loaned him $500 because his accounts were supposedly frozen. By the second week, the atmosphere changed. I came home from work. I run a contracting business, hard hours, heavy lifting, to find the sink full of dishes and Dave asleep on the recliner. The thermostat was cranked down to 65 degrees in the middle of July. My expensive scotch, the bottle I was saving for my retirement, was sitting on the counter, half empty. I didn't say anything. The man was going through a divorce. I cut him some slack. I washed the dishes. I put the bottle away. I woke him up gently and asked if he wanted dinner. He looked at me with glazed eyes and muttered something about me being loud. It went downhill from there. He stopped looking for an apartment, he stopped looking for a job. He started treating my house like a hotel where the staff was failing to meet standards. If I bought the wrong brand of coffee, he sighed. If I wanted to watch the news instead of his reality shows, he would huff and storm off to the guest room, slamming the door. But that wasn't the betrayal. That was just him being a bad guest. The betrayal was invisible. It was happening out there, beyond my front door, in the town I had lived in my entire life. It started at the hardware store. I walked in to buy lumber for a deck job. Old man Miller, who had known me since I was a kid, usually greeted me with a joke. This time, he just stared at me. He rang up my items in silence. When I said goodbye, he looked me in the eye and said I should be ashamed of myself. I asked him what he meant. He just shook his head and turned away. I brushed it off. Maybe Miller was having a bad day, but then it happened at the diner. The waitress, who usually gave me an extra slice of pie, slammed my plate down and didn't refill my coffee. Then it happened at the gas station. People were looking at me. Not just looking, glaring. I felt like a stranger in my own life. I am a man who values respect. I pay my debts. I help my neighbors. I fix fences for free and plow driveways in the winter. To suddenly be treated like a pariah was disorienting. The breaking point came 2 weeks ago. I came home early because a job got rained out. I walked into the kitchen quietly, not wanting to wake Dave if he was napping. I heard his voice coming from the back patio. He was on the phone. I stopped. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but he was loud. He was using that voice, the trembling, scared victim voice I had seen him use on Martha. He was saying my name. He told whoever was on the other end that I had threatened to throw him out on the street if he didn't pay me $2,000 in cash by Friday. He said I was screaming at him every night. He said I had shoved him against the wall when he tried to get a glass of water. He said I was drinking heavily and he was terrified for his safety, but he had nowhere else to go. I stood there, frozen. My hands clenched into fists so tight my knuckles turned white. I have never hit a man in anger outside of a ring, and I certainly never charged a dime of rent. I was feeding him, I was housing him, I was comforting him, and he was painting me as a violent, greedy monster. I backed away. I didn't confront him then. If I had walked out onto that patio, I might have done something that would have made his lies come true. I needed to cool down. I needed to think. I drove to the lake and sat in my truck for 3 hours watching the water. Why would he do it? That was the question that burned in my gut. Why destroy my reputation? The answer came to me slowly. It was about leverage. It was about the divorce. If he looked like a victim, a broken man being abused by his harsh landlord, he garnered sympathy. He could beg for money from friends. He could tell the judge his living situation was unstable and dangerous to get concessions. He was using my reputation as kindling to keep himself warm. I went home that night and acted like nothing had happened. Dave was on the couch, eating my chips. He looked up and gave me a weak, pathetic smile. He asked if I could lend him another $100 for legal fees. I gave it to him. I looked him in the eye and handed him the cash. I wanted to see if his hand shook. It didn't. He took it with the greed of a man who thinks he is smarter than everyone else in the room. That night, I became a detective in my own home. I waited until he passed out, usually around 2 in the morning. Then I went to work. I checked the trash, I checked the recycling. I found receipts. Receipts for a casino 2 towns over. Receipts for high-end steak dinners. Receipts for a new watch. He wasn't broke. I found a bank statement he had crumpled up and shoved into the bottom of the kitchen bin. It was for an account I didn't know about, a savings account. It had $40,000 in it. He had 40 grand sitting in the bank, and he was taking my cash, eating my food, and telling the town I was abusing him. The rage was a cold, hard knot in my chest. I wanted to throw him through the window, but that wouldn't fix what he had done to my name. If I just kicked him out, he would spin the story. He would tell everyone I finally snapped. He would show up at Martha's door with his bags and a bruise he probably gave himself. And I would be the villain forever. No, I needed to clear the slate. I needed witnesses. I organized the barbecue. I told Dave it was to cheer him up. I told him we should invite everyone, the old football crew, the neighbors, his cousins, even Linda's sister who had always liked me. I told him I wanted to show him support. He ate it up. He loved the idea of a crowd, a bigger audience for his performance. I spent 3 days prepping. I bought the best cuts of meat. I cleaned the yard. And I set up my own little surprise. I installed a camera in the kitchen. Not hidden, just sitting on top of the fridge, disguised as a Bluetooth speaker. And I waited. The morning of the party, I laid the bait. I told Dave I was going out to get ice. I left his favorite expensive bourbon on the counter, knowing he couldn't resist. I hit record on the speaker and walked out the door. I sat in my truck down the block and watched the live feed on my phone. Dave walked into the kitchen. He poured a massive drink. He pulled out his phone and called Linda, his ex-wife. The conversation that followed was the final nail in his coffin. He laughed. A deep belly laugh I hadn't heard in months. He told her I was a gullible idiot. He told her he was saving so much money living here that he'd be able to buy a boat by summer. He bragged about how he had the neighbors wrapping him in blankets while I cooked for him. He mocked my dead wife, saying I was desperate for company because I was a lonely old loser. I saved the video. I transferred it to my tablet. I hooked the tablet up to the big outdoor TV I used for football games on the patio. And now, here we are. I walked over to the picnic table. The conversation died down as I approached. People looked at me with wariness. Martha actually shifted her body to shield Dave, as if I were about to strike him. Dave looked up, his eyes wide and fearful. "Mark," he stammered. "Everything okay?" "Everything is perfect, Dave," I said. My voice was calm. It carried across the yard. "I just wanted to make a toast." Dave relaxed slightly. He thought I was going to grovel. He thought I was going to publicly apologize for whatever imaginary crimes he had accused me of. I tapped my spatula on the side of the grill. "Everyone, listen up. I know things have been weird lately. I know there's been a lot of talk. The silence was heavy. You could hear the charcoal hissing. Dave here has been going through a hard time, I continued. And as his best friend, I tried to help. But I realized recently that I haven't been listening enough. I haven't heard what Dave has really been saying. Dave frowned. He sensed the shift in the air. "Mark, you don't have to do this," he said, playing the humble martyr. "Oh, but I do," I said. "I really do, because the truth is important, and I think we should all hear the truth, directly from the source." I pointed the remote at the TV mounted on the patio wall. "I want you all to see how much Dave appreciates your sympathy." I pressed play. The screen flickered to life. The audio was crisp. It was Dave, standing in my kitchen just 4 hours ago, holding my bourbon. "Mark is a total sucker, Linda. I've got him waiting on me hand and foot. He thinks I'm broke. I've got 50 grand in the Cayman account and another 40 in savings, and he's handing me cash for legal fees. It's pathetic." A gasp went through the crowd. Dave froze. His face went pale, drained of all color. The video continued. "Yeah, I told Martha he threatened to hit me. She almost called the cops. It keeps them off my back. If they think he's the bad guy, nobody asks why I'm not paying child support. I'm living rent-free, drinking his scotch, and he's terrified to say a word because I've got the whole town thinking he's a psycho. It's the perfect setup." On the screen, Dave took a swig of bourbon and laughed. "Honestly, I should have divorced you years ago. Mooching off this lonely loser is the best vacation I've ever had." He's still crying over his dead wife. It makes him so easy to manipulate. I paused the video. The silence in the backyard was absolute. It was a vacuum. No birds, no wind, just the crushing weight of the truth. I looked at Martha. Her mouth was open. She looked from the screen to Dave, and the look of pity on her face curdled into pure, unadulterated fury. I looked at Dave. He wasn't slumping anymore. He was shaking. And this time, it was real. "Mark," he whispered. "Mark, I was just blowing off steam. It's out of context." "Out of context?" I asked. I tossed the stack of bank statements onto the picnic table. They slid across the plastic tablecloth and fanned out in front of everyone. "These are the statements from the trash, Dave. The casino receipts, the steak dinners, the $40,000. I took a step closer to him. He shrank back. "You told these people I abused you," I said, my voice rising just enough to be heard by the neighbors 3 doors down. "You told them I threatened you. You used the memory of my wife to mock me." I pointed to the gate. "Get out." Dave looked around the yard, searching for an ally. He looked at his cousins. They turned their backs. He looked at Martha. Martha stood up. She picked up her cup of punch and threw it right in his face. The red liquid splashed over his shirt, staining it like blood. "You piece of filth," Martha spat. "Get out," I roared. The controls snapped. The anger I had been holding back for 2 weeks exploded. "You have 5 minutes to get your trash off my property before I burn it." Dave scrambled up. He tripped over the bench, fell into the grass, and scrambled back to his feet. He didn't look at anyone. He ran for the back door to get his bags. I followed him into the house. I didn't touch him. I didn't have to. I stood in the hallway with my arms crossed while he frantically stuffed clothes into his duffel bags. He was crying now. Real tears, panic tears. "Mark, please," he blubbered. "I have nowhere to go. My parents won't take me. Linda won't take me." "You have $40,000, I said, cold as ice. "Go to a hotel. Go to hell. I don't care." He dragged his bags to the front door. He paused, hand on the knob, looking back at me. "We were brothers," he said. "No," I corrected him. "I was a brother." "You were a parasite." I slammed the door behind him. I locked the deadbolt. Then I went back out to the party. The mood had shifted. It wasn't a party anymore. It was a wake for a friendship. But the tension was gone. The glare in people's eyes was gone. Old Man Miller walked up to me. He put a hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry, Mark," he said. "I should have known better. I should have asked you." "It's okay," I said. "He's good at what he does." Martha was crying. She came over and hugged me. "I believed him," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry. He made it sound so real." "Predators always do," I told her. We didn't continue the barbecue. People packed up quietly and left, shaking my hand one by one, offering apologies. They needed time to process. I understood that. I spent the evening cleaning up. I threw away the half-empty bottle of bourbon. I stripped the sheets from the guest bed and threw them in the trash. I didn't want to wash them. I wanted them gone. Around 10 o'clock, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Dave. "I'm at the Motel 6. Please, man, I messed up. Let me come back. I'll pay rent. I'll tell everyone I lied." I didn't reply. I blocked the number. The next day, the town was buzzing. Small towns are like telegraph wires. The signal travels fast. By noon, everyone knew. The cashier at the grocery store apologized to me. The waitress at the diner gave me my coffee on the house. But more importantly, Dave was done. He tried to go to the local bar that night. Mike, the bartender, told me later that he didn't even serve him. He just pointed to the door. Dave tried to go to his cousin's house. They didn't answer the door. He had burned his bridge, and I had lit the match, but he was the one who poured the gasoline. A week later, I heard he skipped town. He moved 2 states over to live with a distant aunt. He couldn't handle the eyes. He couldn't handle the truth staring back at him from every face on Main Street. I sat on my porch that evening. It was quiet. The house was empty. But it didn't feel lonely. It felt clean. It felt like mine again. I learned a hard lesson. Loyalty is a currency, and you have to be careful where you spend it. I had spent mine on a man who was bankrupt of character. I wouldn't make that mistake again. I took a sip of my scotch. A new bottle, one he had never touched. It burned going down, a clean, sharp heat. The sun was going down, casting long shadows across the lawn. I watched the streetlights flicker on. I was down one best friend. I was down a few $1,000s, but I had my name back. I had my home back. And that was worth every penny. Some people say you should forgive and forget. They say holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I disagree. Sometimes anger is the fuel you need to take out the trash. Sometimes you have to burn the field to let the new grass grow. I went inside and locked the door. For the first time in 3 months, I slept soundly. No noise from the guest room, no walking on eggshells, just the silence of an honest house. Dave was gone, and I was still standing. That's the only ending that matters.